comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late-night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Steyn. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton Tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
It's Mark Dolan in for the Mark Steyn on the very last occasion this year, and we've got a busy show for you. In my big opinion monologue, the nurses could get their pay rise if the NHS stops wasting billions on meaningless job titles and wokery. We'll speak to a nurse who's been suing the NHS for pushing dangerous and divisive woke policies that you and I are paying for. It's a shocker. You won't want to miss her story. She's live in just a couple of minutes. Another 3 episodes of the Meghan and Harry documentary have arrived. We'll get reaction from the brilliant Spectator columnist Cara Kennedy. She's watched that rubbish, so you don't have to. Tory MP Andrew Bridgen has called on the government to halt the use of mRNA COVID vaccines. Does he have a point? Top cardiologist Dr. Aseem Malhotra joins me shortly to run through the evidence. I think you'll be spitting your tea out. And rounding up the big stories of the week, live in the studio, former national newspaper editor Kelvin McKenzie, who even makes a cameo appearance in the Harry and Meghan documentary. But my big opinion is on its way, and I'm laying it out straight tonight. We've got the nurses, they're on strike. I have my solution. And it's on the other side of the headlines with Tamsin Roberts.
Mark, thank you. Good evening from the GB Newsroom. Rail strikes will still go ahead tomorrow after talks failed to resolve a dispute over pay, jobs and conditions. The 48-hour walkout by members of the RMT union will severely disrupt services across the UK, with some areas having no trains at all. 14 rail companies will be affected, including Network Rail. Passengers are being urged to travel only if necessary. Tens of thousands of nurses have been taking part in the biggest strike in NHS history today. Picket lines were set up in England, Wales and Northern Ireland in the first of two 12-hour walkouts over pay. Staff have been providing some urgent care, but routine surgery and other planned treatment was disrupted. Meanwhile, ground baggage handlers at Heathrow Airport have suspended planned strike action after receiving an improved pay offer. More than 400 staff members had been set to begin a 72-hour walkout tomorrow morning. The Unite union says it will now ballot its members, and other planned industrial action remains in place pending the outcome. The Prime Minister is making his first trip to Northern Ireland since taking office. Tonight, he's expected to host informal talks with political leaders in an attempt to end Stormont suspension. Rishi Sunak will also use the trip to promote the government's investment in shipbuilding in Belfast. He says the deal to build Royal Navy support vessels will create thousands of high-value jobs. The 4 boys who died after falling into a frozen lake in Solihull have been named by West Midlands Police. 8-year-old Finlay Butler, his 6-year-old brother Samuel and their cousin, 11-year-old Thomas Stewart, were taken to hospital where they died on Monday. The 4th child, who reportedly tried to save the others, has been named as Jack Johnson, aged 10. The families say they are devastated by the loss of the boys in such tragic circumstances. The royal family have gathered at Westminster Abbey this evening for a Christmas carol service hosted by the Princess of Wales and attended by the King. Just a warning for those watching on television, flashing images here. The Together at Christmas concert was attended by nearly 2,000 people in a service to recognise the selfless efforts of individuals and families. The royal family put on a united front just hours after the second instalment of Harry and Meghan's controversial Netflix docuseries was released. TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News. Now, back to Mark.
Good evening. I've got a solution to the nurses' strike. Give the nurses their pay rise, they deserve a bump, but find it from the existing NHS budget. After all, the NHS budget isn't far off £200 billion and amounts to a bill of £13,000 a year per household across the country. Surely that's enough money. I'm pretty sure that a bonfire of bureaucracy and the reduction of middle management, pen pushers on 6-figure salaries who have nothing to do with treating sick people, ought to do the trick. Not paying a fiver for a packet of paracetamol or paying a contractor £50 to change a light bulb might help as well. People often boast that the NHS is the biggest employer in Europe. That's not a boast. That's an admission of its wild inefficiency. And the axing of woke job titles ought to free up a few £100 million too, like diversity officers for a famously diverse organisation. Woke projects, we're led to believe, cost over £7 billion across all government departments, with the state sector paying huge amounts of money for courses on divisive and controversial ideas like gender ideology, which questions the very idea that there is a man or a woman, or critical race theory, again, a contested idea that suggests you're intrinsically racist based upon the colour of your skin. A brave nurse called Amy Gallagher has taken the NHS to court on this very issue. The mental health nurse, who was in the final stages of a 2-year course in forensic psychology, objected to a lecture entitled "Whiteness, a Problem of Our Time," where attendees were forced to confront the reality of their white privilege. In another lecture the following month, Miss Gallagher says that she was told Christianity is racist because it's European. Wow. Well, the NHS is full of this nonsense. A review into how the health service and social care sector is managed, entitled The Messenger Report, Shoot the Messenger, found that equality, diversity and inclusion were mentioned 3 times as often as patient care. There's a surprise. Meanwhile, the health service has spent more than £1 million, that's right, £1 million, on hundreds of staff networks using taxpayers' money to put on events around transgender issues, sexuality and racism, often held during the working day. These events have included tea and rainbow cake picnics, a special session about pronouns, and a Filipino martial arts performance. Hiya! An audit by the Taxpayers Alliance found that there are now almost 500 networks across the UK health service. Now, don't get me wrong, racism is the most evil scourge in our society, and diversity is a great thing. But we don't pay the NHS to do tea parties at the expense of patient care, or paint rainbow zebra crossings outside hospitals that serve only to confuse guide dogs. There can't be anyone of sound mind now that thinks more money is the answer for the NHS. In a fascinating report this week, the Institute for Fiscal Studies has revealed that spending on the NHS has gone up, with more staffing, just as the service has become worse. It's a complex story, I'll grant you that. But by tackling needless waste, perhaps the nurses could get their pay rise after all. Health bosses just need to spend less time composing leaflets which deny the existence of women, describing breastfeeding as chest feeding and referring to females as people who menstruate. What a bloody nerve. Menstruate, bloody nerve, you're welcome. Here's my point. The NHS would save millions if it stripped out woke nonsense. When people go to a hospital, they don't want a political lecture. They want treatment. People who menstruate, bloody nerve, you're welcome. I'm delighted now to be joined by the woman mentioned in my big opinion monologue, NHS nurse and psychotherapist Amy Gallagher. Hi, Amy.
Hi, Mark. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you on the programme. To what extent has this woke culture infiltrated the NHS in your view?
Oh, a considerable amount. With regards to the report that you were mentioning, it found that there's 10,000 so-called equality diversity roles in the public sector, and that this costs the taxpayer £500 million, which could, the report laid this out quite nicely, could go on around 12,000, paying the salaries of 12,500 nurses. So in the first instance, all this equality and diversity and inclusion is actually stopping the NHS from increasing its workforce because it costs so much. And then on top of that, it doesn't even do what it says on the tin. It says it's about equality, diversity and inclusion, but actually some of the ideas that it pushes are extremely discriminatory and nefarious. And certainly in my case, with my lawsuit, they're pushing ideas of critical race theory, which are not about equality. It's actually treating people differently. So it's completely waste of money, in my opinion, and actually does quite a considerable amount of harm, I would say.
What is your situation now? Because I understand that you were forced to do these workshops whilst studying. So what is your relationship with the NHS right now?
Yeah, so I'm still working as a nurse. There was attempts to have me struck off as a nurse because I disagreed with white privilege and I disagreed with the idea that all white people are racist. But I've been suspended from my training course, training to be a psychotherapist. And that's still, I don't know what the outcome of that's going to be. I don't know whether I'll be able to qualify as a psychotherapist. There's still negotiations going on, and obviously, I've got my legal team are involved, so I don't know whether I'm going to be allowed to become a psychotherapist. But essentially, they've said I'm not appropriate because I don't have the right views, and my views are not I just don't think that we should be scapegoating whole groups of people based on their religion or their race. These are views that most people hold.
Critical race theory is just that. It's a theory. It's not fact. But it seems that in certain quarters of the NHS, it's now being sold as fact. And we're seeing a similar situation with gender ideology, where top medics will have you believe that a biological man can become a biological woman. Again, factually impossible, scientifically impossible, but that's what's being taught in the NHS.
Yes, yeah, definitely. I think within the area of both race and gender, which comes under the heading of equality and diversity and inclusion, there are ideas that are being pushed that are not evidence-based and actually reject evidence. They don't accept evidence, and actually they see evidence as part of the white supremacy system of oppression or whatever, and actually it's just pushing an ideology.
And Christianity is racist because it's European. That's an interesting one.
Yeah. Obviously, it's actually not a European religion, but some of these people really don't know what they're talking about. But this is whole part of generally what's called critical social justice, which is an attack on Western values and particular groups.
Plenty of your fellow students would reject the nonsense to which you were subjected. But they've not had your courage to speak up. That's the point, isn't it? You're not a lone voice. You're the one that's put your head above the parapet.
Yeah, that's right. And since I've been in the media and since I've, been raising money for my crowdfund, I've had so many people contact me, so many nurses and psychologists and psychotherapists saying essentially, I completely agree with you. I'm so sorry this has happened to you. I feel like I can't speak out. I feel like I have to go along with these ideas. And I thought I was the only one. And actually, there's a lot of people saying, I think I'm the only one. But actually, there's a lot of them that all think that. So there is just a culture of silence, I think, around woke ideology still within the NHS.
Listen, you are a biological female. You're quite old school in that way. But let me tell you, you've got a pair of balls on you. How can people find out about your crowdfunding? Let's give it a plug.
Yeah, so my crowdfunding is at GoFundMe/StandUpToWoke, and also on Twitter, StandUpToWoke, all one word. Or you can just Google me, Amy Gallagher, StandUpToWoke, and you'll find me.
Amy Gallagher, you're a hero, a heroine, he, her, she, him. Do join us again soon and keep up the good work. Fight the good fight. Amy Gallagher there. Check her out on Twitter. Coming up, should the vaccine rollout be stopped? I'll speak to top cardiologist Aseem Malhotra, who has partnered with Tory MP Andrew Bridgen to call for an end to the jabs. What do they know that we don't? Plus, former national newspaper editor Kelvin McKenzie on the nurses' strike and his cameo appearance in the Harry and Meghan documentary. Probably the only interesting bit. But next up, we'll get reaction to the latest saga from the top royals. We've got columnist from The Spectator, Cara Kennedy, and she's not pulling her punches. She's watched that rubbish, so you don't have to. See you in 3.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GBNews. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. B, I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Welcome back to the show. Why has top cardiologist Aseem Malhotra partnered with Tory MP Andrew Bridgen to call for a pause in the vaccination programme for COVID-19? Some shocking statistics. He's up shortly. But first, let's get your reactions. GB Views at gbnews.uk. We asked the following question. Should the nurses' pay rise come out of the existing NHS budget? Sarah says, yeah, stop paying those ridiculous salaries for made-up or not needed director jobs, and the nurses can get their pay rise and the services we all need and use can get the money that they need. RH says get rid of the unnecessary middle managers and wokery, sort out procurement. Funny enough, those are some of the key themes of my big opinion monologue. If you missed it, it's now on Twitter, courtesy of Ben, who's just popped that onto our Twitter feed at GB News. So do check it out. So how about this from Politico? People died protecting the NHS during lockdown. People couldn't get cancer screenings, etc. Feels like an absolute spit in the face by NHS staff. And last but not least, Nathan, get rid of the pointless diversity officers and distribute their pay, and then do the same with most of the bad management. Folks, it's almost like you've written my big opinion monologue for me. By the way, props to Paige, who's also part of our digital team. All of the highlights of the show are at GB News on Twitter. The final 3 episodes of Harry and Meghan's documentary series has arrived, so that in total is 6 hours of our lives that we won't get back. Any revelations? Any more truth bombs dropped? Let's get reaction from the brilliant Spectator columnist Cara Kennedy, who's watched it so you don't have to. Hi, Cara.
Hi, Mark. Yeah, it's been a long day. This was the big one. The first leg of the documentary, which came out last week, was a total snooze fest. It reiterated everything we knew. It saw them make the same accusations without naming anybody, like we saw in the famous Oprah interview, like we've seen 100 times by now. Well, this second half was the bombshell that we were promised. There were clear villains and heroes. Prince William was by far the one that they really wanted to portray as the bad guy. We see Harry singling out Prince William for a lot of the blame throughout. We're told about institutionalised gaslighting. We're told about what Beyoncé thinks about it all, and it's framed and portrayed as the ultimate love story.
Yeah, I mean, this is the problem, isn't it? I think what I find most unedifying and saddest about this documentary series is what it's going to do to the relationship between the two brothers. You know, lots of us have problems with our dad, our granddad, that sort of thing. But, you know, it's just the two of them. They've got each other. They lost their mother, and now they've lost each other.
Yeah, there is no going back from this. We're told that Megxit happened because somebody from William's press team leaked Harry's private plans. William was blamed totally for that. When Megxit was announced, William apparently screamed at Harry at the crisis meeting at Sandringham, which was also nicknamed the Sandringham Summit. Harry called it terrifying. William then put out a joint statement from the brothers without supposedly consulting Harry first. But William isn't the only one that is kind of villainized in the whole thing. Charles doesn't get away with anything. When Harry said it was terrifying to have my brother scream at me, my father said things that simply weren't true, and my grandmother quietly sit there and sort of take it all in. So Charles doesn't get away with it, and even the Queen, where it might not seem so bad towards his grandmother, but remember, she is the one that presided over the institution that he is complaining about. So you even see him kind of complaining about the Queen in this one, where usually Meghan and Harry have nothing but good words to say about the Queen, and they're very clear on that.
They've opened their hearts to the world. Is there any material left, particularly with a book in the offing?
Well, yeah, so I kind of thought, wow, what new stuff could transpire? But there was new stuff in this. We heard about Meghan's miscarriage a lot more. That's something I've seen a lot of discourse on social media. Harry makes a very damning accusation, which was, I believe that my wife suffered a miscarriage because of what the Mail did. Obviously, they're talking about the privacy battle that happened after the Mail on Sunday wrote the letter that she wrote to, published the letter that she wrote to her father, so that was new. That was very damning. But yeah, we heard about Nottingham Cottage, about how they weren't very happy about their Grace and Favour residents. But yeah, I mean, we've got, how many days is it now? 26 days until Harry's book comes out to tell this entire story over again. So we'll see what's new.
As a piece of television, how do you rate it? I mean, is it watchable? Did you find that you got to the end of episode 4 and you were looking forward to the next 2?
So the first 3 was a slog. It was very hard to kind of get through because, like I said, we've seen it all. The last 3, they're kind of very reality TV-esque, kind of keeping up with the Kardashians. There's little cutaway shots. Also, a point they name drop. There was a point where Beyonce texts Meghan randomly as the cameras were on them, saying that she thinks that Meghan was selected to break generational curses that need to be healed. And Meghan does a little "oh" at the end. So yeah, it's quite performative and it's quite reality TV-ish compared to Archetypes and Meghan's podcast. That's kind of a lot more scripted. We see a lot more kind of natural shots of them in this.
You are heroic to have watched it on our behalf. I look forward to reading about it in your Spectator column, and I do look forward to catching up with you in the near future, the Spectator columnist Cara Kennedy. Thanks, Cara. Apologies to viewers if you had trouble there hearing Cara. There was a slight issue with the line. The emails are coming in thick and fast in response to my big opinion monologue. I believe that the pay rise should happen, but it should come out of the NHS budget. Why? Well, because it's almost 200 billion quid and it's 13 grand per household per year. Surely that's enough. This from Janet. Hi, Mark. The private sector charge a fortune to supply patients with things like crutches. Sometimes you can rent them with a good deposit. The National Health Service used to recycle them with no charge or deposit. I know because I was a physio giving them out. Now the National Health Service just give them away. I made an appointment to see my MP. She was a doctor, so I thought she would take notice of this waste, but she said it was not worth the bother. My question is, says Janet, someone is making a big profit out of a contract, probably importing them from China. Total waste of precious National Health Service money and the Earth's resources. Thank you so much for that. Mark, I agree with your big opinion monologue, says Philip. The NHS should self-fund the increase to nurses' pay. Experience in 2020 when mother-in-law receiving palliative care is that nurses no longer make decisions on care. Instead, It's the clipboard brigade that make decisions to manage and coordinate, adding zero value. They change daily plunger. What does that mean? They change daily plunger, but don't do anything to relieve basic body functions. I think that's a medical issue. As you can see, I'm not a doctor, although I like to think I've got that look. Thank you very much for that. Philip there, not happy about the pen pushers and the clipboard wielders. Keep those opinions coming. GB Views at gbnews.uk. Next up, we've got former national newspaper editor Kelvin McKenzie with some tough love for the nurses and why he made a cameo appearance in the Harry and Meghan documentary. But straight after the break, and you've got to see this, is it time to pause the vaccine rollout amid safety concerns? That's the view of top Tory MP Andrew Bridgen and renowned cardiologist Aseem Malhotra. What do they know that we don't? That's next.
Coming up on Dan Wootton tonight, as Harry and Meghan's payback gets personal, with claims they were bullied out of the royal family and attempts to turn the British press into a bogeyman, Dan is joined by figures at the heart of the story, including Meghan's estranged sister Samantha Markle and insiders Tom Bower and Lady Colin Campbell. Plus, TV hardman Ant Middleton weighs in, and Dan asks, are nurses exploiting the goodwill of Brits as they launch a historic strike? Join Dan 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. on GB News.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. Over a drink, we have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the show. Top Tory MP Andrew Bridgen and leading cardiologist Aseem Malhotra have teamed up to call for a pause in the COVID-19 vaccine rollout. Here is Andrew Bridgen addressing the Commons yesterday.
Since the rollout in the UK of the biotech Pfizer mRNA vaccine, we've had almost 500,000 yellow card reports of adverse effects from the public. Madam Deputy Speaker, this is unprecedented. It is more than all the yellow card combined reports of the last 40 years. Such an extraordinary rate of side effects, which are beyond mild, have been reported in many countries across the world that have used the Pfizer vaccine, including, of course, the United States.
Something of a mic drop moment there from Andrew Bridgen. Well, top cardiologist and best-selling health author Aseem Malhotra joins me now. Hi, Aseem.
Hi, Mark.
Aseem, surely, well, it's great to see you again. It's been too long. You've obviously been down in Parliament. You were in Westminster yesterday to hear Andrew Bridgen make that statement. What are the key themes of his statement?
Yeah, I mean, it was an extraordinary speech. I think it will probably go down in history as a very pivotal moment, I think, in the history of medicine, because he essentially, he did cite my research, because I previously, about 2 months before that, when I published my paper in the Journal of Inter-Resistance, where I called for the suspension of the mRNA vaccines, Andrew was actually present at my talk, a number of other MPs, including, in fact, Danny Kruger. We must give him some credit. He's a Conservative MP. He was David Cameron's former speechwriter, I understand, when he was Prime Minister. And he also added support to Andrew in the chamber and was at my talk. So I think the key thing is the evidence is very clear on the fact that this mRNA vaccine technology certainly now has a close to non-existent benefit, but the harms are unprecedented. We have the highest level quality of data we can ever have, Mark, in terms of harms. We call it double-blind randomized controlled trial, reanalysis of Pfizer and Moderna's trials of a serious adverse event rate of at least 1 in 800. We've got mechanism of action. We've got autopsy studies confirming this. And of course, the shocking pharmacovigilance data, almost 500,000 yellow card reports on the Pfizer vaccine alone, much higher rates certainly reported in the United States and other parts of the world. So it's really a no-brainer. And, and Andrew started his speech by saying that really the reason that these facts aren't being acknowledged by the mainstream media, I want to come on to them in a second, and the establishment, is because of willful blindness, right? So this is human beings turning a blind eye to the truth in order to feel safe, protect prestige, reduce anxiety, and avoid conflict. And we've seen lots of examples of that in history. BBC and Jimmy Savile, which he mentioned, Hollywood and Harvey Weinstein, for example, the Department of Health and Mid-Staff. This is not new. But we're now dealing with something that is truly, truly very disturbing, is continuing to cause harm to people, especially as a cardiologist, I can say, to the heart. And it needs to be paused and suspended, and we move on from it. I think, and rebuild the system. I think that's one of the other things, highlight why we got this wrong and rebuild the system. And the mainstream media isn't reporting it. And obviously, for confidential reasons, I can't name these people, but a number of prominent journalists, broadcasters in the BBC, ITV, people I know personally, they come to me for medical advice, have all themselves said they're not going to have any more boosters or vaccines. They need to come out and say, listen, we're not having it. And we are concerned. And we think there should be a pause. Gurinder Chadha, the film director, well known for films like Bend It Like Beckham, Blinded by the Lights, Viceroy's House that she did, her series. She's come out and said as well that she's not going to have any more boosters and supports my calls for suspension. There's been a couple of doctors recently, which is great, that have come out. A cardiologist called Dean Patterson, orthopedic surgeon Arman Malik. So more and more people are coming out, Mark, but unfortunately we keep seeing these adverts and hearing about them, about people being told to come and have their COVID booster, when we're now dealing with what really is just a cold. And that's good news. It's a cold, right? And the vaccine has, we've already calculated, almost no benefit in terms of, certainly now, it may have been a bit of a benefit early on in preventing COVID death, and the harms are consistent and they are serious.
We've heard figures of around 3 million lives saved globally as a result of the vaccine. Do you really want anybody that's in a vulnerable situation, an older person, somebody with a high BMI, to hear you talking down the vaccines and then die from COVID. I mean, here's the thing, Asim. Surely the COVID vaccine is by definition the most tested vaccine in history, given the fact that billions have had it.
Yeah, sadly not, Mark. And in fact, that figure of 3 million, that isn't based upon any good hard evidence. I mean, there was a headline about 20 million lives saved from COVID vaccines, but it was based upon the lowest level quality of evidence we can ever have, a modeling study. In other words, people like John Ioannidis, who I consider the Stephen Hawking of medicine, describe such sort of studies or observational studies as being spurious, in other words, fake. This is science fiction, not scientific fact. And I've broken down the information in such a way, and Mark, I'm glad you've raised this, Mark, because I'm all about informed consent. So if we take the most vulnerable group right now, which is, say, the people over the age of 80, who are the most vulnerable to COVID, you have to vaccinate 7,300 of them to prevent one COVID death. Let them make that decision if that's what they really want. But you're talking of a serious adverse event rate of at least 1 in 800. We've pulled other vaccines in the past for much less. Swine flu vaccine, 1976, pulled because it caused Guillain-Barré syndrome in 1 in 100,000. The rotavirus vaccine was pulled in 1999 because it caused a form of bowel obstruction in 1 in 10,000. The original trial data, Mark, which was reanalyzed when we had the more lethal Wuhan strain, suggested one was more likely to get a serious adverse effect from the vaccine than one was to be hospitalized with COVID. What does that mean, Mark? It means, if that is correct, which it clearly seems to be, it should never have been approved in the first place.
However, a lot of these statistics around vaccine side effects are self-reported, aren't they? Yellow card. Is there a concern on your part about their veracity?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, Mark. So normally people don't report these effects unless they feel really ill, right? So clearly something's happened, and they normally do it within a very short time period after having the vaccine. But actually, historically, I'm glad you've raised this, pharmacovigilance data, it's thought that serious adverse events that are reported actually only represent 10% of the true events in the population. In other words, it's likely to be tenfold higher. So if anything, of course, some of them may be coincidence, but the likelihood is most of these yellow card reports are genuine, and then we're missing many other people. I'll give you one example. So this 1 in 800 figure, which is from randomized controlled trial data, so that's irrefutable in terms of at least 1 in 800. That's in the first 2 months. A peer-reviewed medical journal concluded, because I also made that conclusion myself and they supported it, is that my father, honorary vice president of the BMA, Labour Party's Doctor of the Year, and there's a reason I'm mentioning that in a minute, he suffered a sudden cardiac arrest and died 6 months after having the second dose. He would not have been picked up in that original trial. That suggests this problem is much worse as we move forward, because the mechanism is, and I can explain this, it accelerates heart disease. We're going to have lots of people who've got mild furring of their arteries that have never bothered them, certainly not for a long time, who are suddenly presenting with severe heart problems, heart attacks, needing stents. I'm managing many of these patients myself, and the clear diagnosis has been the common denominator in these diagnoses is the vaccine. And again, it's great that Andrew Bridgen's come forward. Sir Christopher Chope has also been very vocal on this, a Conservative MP. But I'm just really shocked that Labour are silent on it, and it just baffles me why the Labour Party and members of the Labour Party aren't coming out. And I know a number of politicians, I won't name them, certainly Labour ones, that themselves are saying they're not going to have any more boosters and are worried because one of their relatives was vaccine injured. They're scared to speak out. But, enough is enough, Mark. This is really going down without a shadow of a doubt as the greatest miscarriage of medical science, attack on democracy, erosion in trust in public health, and damage to population health that we will see in our lifetime. I have no doubt about that. The evidence is overwhelming.
It's interesting. You mentioned this study. Some have suggested that the 1 in 800 adverse events was based on unorthodox methodology. But the bottom line is that we have it in black and white, Asim. The vaccine is killing some people, including BBC presenter Lisa Shaw, whose husband, Gareth, is endlessly on Twitter trying to draw attention to the fact that she received the AstraZeneca vaccine. She was not in the vulnerable group. She's no longer with us. Arguably, the vaccine should have been focused on the medically vulnerable from the very beginning.
Absolutely, Mark. I think that should have been, we would be a lot better off if it had just been focusing on the vulnerable. But even having said that, because of that original data and this methodology stuff, that's nonsense. I know a lot of those people that are questioning that. So this was published in the journal Vaccine about the 1-800 figure, peer-reviewed, and it's not being challenged in any legitimate way by anybody other than those that have a vested interest. And the problem we've got, and this is a real issue, and Andrew Bridgen raised it as well, shocking allegations that someone in a leadership role in the British Heart Foundation allegedly is involved in suppressing information that shows that the vaccine causes coronary inflammation. This is a problem that is widespread, that has been going on for many years. Richard Smith, the former editor of the BMJ, only a few years ago wrote in the BMJ that there's a big problem with British institutions covering up research misconduct. And he gave an example where he gave a talk, and he asked people in the audience who were academics from prestigious institutions, how many of you are aware of fabrication of data or fraud taking place in your department? A third of them, Mark, put their hand up. He asked them, how many of you have reported it? They all put their hand down. This is a system failure issue, and we need to rebuild the system.
The clock's against us, Asim. When will the truth out as you see it? When will the mainstream media have to actually address and acknowledge what you consider to be these vaccine harms that, given the fact that many that had the vaccine didn't statistically need them, were unnecessary?
Yeah, listen, I was also double vaxxed, and I was also, misled.
I'm triple vaxxed, baby.
Evidence changed. Yes, can you hear me, Mark?
Yeah, I've had it 3 times.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yes, of course. I know that. So the thing is, we in good faith, we took these vaccines. The evidence has changed. The mainstream media, I think we just have to keep, getting the information out of there. There's been a big shift. I think we're close to the bubble bursting. Certainly, the Andrew Bridgen speech was reported in the Daily Express online. International news is picking it up. I think we're very close to that tipping point, but we have to keep fighting for the truth.
3-second answer. Many would say getting COVID is worse for your heart than any vaccine side effects, including myocarditis.
Completely and totally false. The Times did an article a few weeks ago. I debunked it. The headline was mild COVID linked to heart attacks. The actual paper they referred to revealed the opposite. Mild COVID was linked to less risk of heart disease. This is a kind of fraud we're dealing with, Mark.
A fascinating conversation, Asim. Thank you for joining us. Dr. Asim Malhotra, I would like to confirm that the government continue to recommend vaccines as safe and effective. Thanks, Asim. By the way, the British Heart Foundation have been in Congress, maybe not literally, with my producers, but they've had to say the following. We would encourage those making serious allegations to share specific credible information with us which supports those accusations. The British Heart Foundation's advice on vaccines is based on rigorous scrutiny of the latest evidence, which to date shows that the benefits of receiving the COVID-19 vaccine greatly outweigh the risk of extremely rare side effects for the vast majority of people. A fascinating conversation. Lots more to come. Next up, reacting to Meghan and Harry's new documentary and also some tough love for the nurses, it's Kelvin McKenzie. Keep your hats on. See you in 3.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Steyn. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes & Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dubes & Kerr.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing. You see, amazing.
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Dolan. Welcome back to the show. It's Mark Dolan in for the brilliant Mark Steyn. And reacting to the big stories of the day, including the strikes and that royal documentary, I'm delighted to welcome the founder of TalkSport Radio, columnist, entrepreneur and former editor of the Sun newspaper when it broke all circulation records, Kelvin McKenzie. Kelvin, I want to get to those stories shortly, but a quick word on the vaccine, because you're no anti-vaxxer. You've had the vaccine, you did your bit, you took one for the team, even though you're as fit as a fiddle.
True.
And fitter than a butcher's dog.
Yeah.
But you, like many now, are vaccine hesitant. Why is that?
Right, OK, so the last one I had, right, and I've had COVID at least 2 or 3 times, and maybe 4 times. The last time I had it was literally a few months back. Wallop, it stuck me on the flat of my back for 3 days. I then started asking colleagues and friends about what was it. They all had exactly the same story. It's an extraordinary thing that's happening. Now, why is it that this is happening, and what is the jab worse than having the COVID, which, you know, literally, as far as I was concerned, I sailed through it. I tell you what, I even had it and I went to Saudi Arabia. That's how they all got it. So I think it's an interesting question. The guy is a consultant. He's a heart doctor. He's saying these things. I think you need to get another heart doctor on to say either the opposite and literally have a debate in this studio about it. It's an incredible moment,
Well,
this.
the headline fact, I think, and it's always been the case, is that if you are in a vulnerable group and COVID is something that could hospitalise or kill you, I think you'd be bonkers not to have the vaccine. But why, oh why, are we vaccinating children? Why are we vaccinating healthy young people? And by the way, a lot of people can't get a GP appointment at the moment, but they are being offered a booster.
So why does a consultant heart doctor say that it is damaging your heart? He needs to come on and literally explain what's happening among his cohort of patients, and somebody else needs to say the complete opposite, because otherwise mainstream media is of no account anymore. The only thing that matters is social media and, strangely, GB News, because they're the only people that gives any oxygen to any of this debate. And so we need the side that says this is nonsense, don't do it, to come on, because otherwise people are going to vote with their feet.
That's high praise from a titan of the media.
Titan.
There you go. Harry and Meghan's documentary part 2 has dropped. That's the remaining 3 episodes. Very boring. The only good part was the cameo appearance from said Kelvin McKenzie. Take a look.
The lawsuit claims the male violated the law by publishing a personal letter she wrote to her father.
This is a massive error. If you're royal, keep stum, keep quiet.
Everything changed after that.
Kelvin, full disclosure, whenever you're on Dan's show or on this show, we get a ratings bump.
You do.
And I suspect you've driven Netflix's subscriptions through the roof with that offering.
Well, I've had a word with their CEO about that, and I'm on a slight earner, so you'll be fine. Right. By the way, the other thing that happened from that, after that, I got bumped by Good Morning Britain. So
is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So I'm being traduced by Meghan and given the elbow by Good Morning Britain. So there we are. I must be doing something right.
Support for this couple has become very tribal now, hasn't it?
Well, it has a Diana effect. Do you remember in the Diana days?
Yes.
Where you were either pro-Diana or pro-Charles, and the two would fall out with each other.
Diana, to many, she was deified and she was this angelic figure. Yeah. But the Diana that you knew as a top newspaper editor would be tipping off photographers saying, I'll be in this museum at 3 o'clock tomorrow.
Totally agree. And it all worked great because you then took a picture, stuck it on page 1, you didn't have any other news, and boom, the circulation went up. You were a genius, she was happy, everything went well. So the effect, now the trouble now is that the Meghan Harry thing is the complete opposite of that. You want to take a picture is being taken in which she is going to emerge rather badly. Now this thing here, if somebody paid me $80-odd million to have 6 hours of PR on a global basis, where do I sign? I can't imagine how many would be seeking subscription to the Mark Dolan life story. It's incredible. But some of the aspects of it, pouring a bucket over William about the screaming match, calling his father a liar, the bullying, the sense that they are in a shocking state. Have you seen the size of their house? They have a 14-bathroom house. What are they moaning about? Why don't they just get on with their lives? And the answer to that is the money. Obviously, he's had the money cut off by the palace. She was an actress who had a brief spell of fame in a soap which has now been discontinued. Where is the queue in Hollywood? I tell you what, I tell you what, we're looking for a new superwoman. I tell you we'll go for Meghan Markle. It's never going to happen. So they're going to have to, they have a big lifestyle, they have PRs, they have lawyers, they have this, they have that. They need money. So along comes our old friends at Netflix. Hey, here we go. And it works for them. Run up to Christmas. $80 million is neither here nor there. And actually, they'll probably be moaning. Now, this is the thing for your viewers to think about. They're probably going to be moaning for the next 20 years. Because every time they give a good moan, up comes another couple of $1 million. Yeah. And the question is, OK, so what's the next thing to happen? It wasn't long ago that Fergie was endorsing Weight Watchers. Well, that didn't go too well, did it? I mean,
no, I don't
want to be unkind at all.
You're looking very trim these days, by the way.
Well, this is Slimming World, not Weight Watchers. Okay. Anyway, so that is the issue for them. The issue for them, I'm afraid, you're going to have to put up with moaning. But it's a terrible thing when you take a family dispute. Is there anybody watching who hasn't got a family dispute
Kelvin,
right now?
I agree with you. You're the king of the headline. Yeah. In a sentence, what would you do with the nurses?
I wouldn't play them a brass razoo, as they say in Australia.
Always to the point. The brilliant Kelvin McKenzie, from one journalistic legend to another. Dan Wootton is next. Hi, Dan.
Who needs keeping up with the Kardashians when you've got keeping up with Kelvin? Hey! I love it. But look, Mark, we've got a special edition of the show. Tom Bower, Samantha Markle, Lady Colin Campbell, Ant Middleton. They say that they have revealed their truth, the Sussexes. Well, we're going to give the real story tonight, Mark.
Unmissable television, as always. I'm back at 8 o'clock tomorrow. Thanks to the team, and we'll see you soon.
I'm Alex Deakin, and this is your latest weather update from the Met Office. Milder weather is on the way, but it's going to be a frosty Friday with some snow likely across Scotland. Could be heavy in places as well and may cause some disruption, particularly on Friday morning's rush hour through the central belt. This is the culprit. Doesn't look much, does it? A fairly weak area of low pressure, but these weather fronts moving in will be bringing some wet weather, hitting that cold air. Could provide some heavy snow later tonight. Still a few wintry showers over northern Scotland and for eastern England, where things could be quite icy, and some mist and fog patches reforming this evening, which could be quite dense. But for most, it's clear, and it is very, cold, especially in the south. Actually, it won't be quite as cold across the northwest compared to recent nights, because here that wet weather is moving in. Some heavy snow over the Highlands, and then through the morning that could well slip through the central belt of Scotland, especially for that morning rush hour. We could see a few centimetres of snow for a time before it then starts to turn back to rain as we go into the afternoon. But the potential for some disruption as that wintry weather hits Scotland during tomorrow. A few showers for Northern Ireland, most of England and Wales dry and sunny once the fog has cleared, but still cold, struggling to get much above freezing. And quickly, on Friday evening, temperatures drop back below freezing. Bear that in mind if you're heading out. With showers across parts of the north, could be icy on Friday night and into Saturday morning. At this stage, the showers will mostly be of rain at low levels, but some snow is still possible, certainly over the hills of northern England during Saturday, and more snow showers coming in across the Highlands of Scotland. A few showers getting into parts of Wales as well. Again, most of these will be rain at low levels. Much of the south and the east will be dry and bright on Saturday. Look at this, 4 or 5 degrees. Most of us haven't seen that for a good few days. It's going to turn milder still on Sunday. This area of low pressure is moving in. It's bringing milder air, but it's also bringing strong winds and, for a time,